Hi. This game is between Anatoli Vaisser with the white pieces against the Spanish Grandmaster Miguel Illescas Cordoba. This game was from the Spanish Team Championship in 1996. Now I'm going to flip the board because I want you to look at it from Black's perspective here, because I want to balance it out so that you can see that Black can win some games too. Here we're sticking with our theme of development and what to do when one has a lead in development. Okay, so the game started out d4 d5. Anatoli Vaisser played c4, e6 from Cordoba, knight c3. So we have a normal looking Queen's Gambit position. c5. So now we have an invitation to the Tarrasch defense. Vaisser plays e3. Now normal is c takes d5, e takes d5, knight f3, going into the Tarrasch defense proper, where white would play move like g2 and followed by bishop, g3 and followed by bishop g2. And the idea is to coordinate the pieces to work on this isolated pawn here. But this is playable, although not critical. So e3 is played, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6. And Cordoba is a long-time Tarrasch player, so he doesn't mind taking on this isolated pawn position and allows this to occur. Bishop d6 is played, and now we see that white is going to make an error here in the opening, and basically the error is going pawn grabbing in the opening, moving the same piece several times instead of just completing his development. You see this a lot in beginner games, but these are two very strong grandmasters here. So here's knight e5. We see there's a threat to win a pawn by exchanging on c6. Now the normal continuation is just castle, castle, d takes, bishop takes c5, b3, and bishop b2. Again, to restrict and eventually win this isolated pawn. So knight e5 is tried. And notice how Miguel Illescas, he defends, right? But he also threatens at the same time, thus gaining a lead in development. And another thing that's noteworthy too is he doesn't just play a defensive move here like bishop d7, breaking the pin and allowing this just trade right here pieces. Instead, he keeps the tension, creates a threat at the same time, and obtains a lead in development. So now, more pressure is placed on the queen a4. And now, does black play bishop d7, a move we rejected formerly, or play castle, which is played in the game? So this is a critical decision here. He decides to sacrifice the pawn in order to exacerbate his lead in development. So let's see what happens. Knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop takes c6, and now what do we do when we have a lead in development? We open up the position. Now notice, this all had to be calculated. Notice this rook on a8 is threatened. So if he makes a move, say like rook b8, then knight d5, it happens. And now it's not critical because knight takes d5 can be played, bishop takes d5, and then perhaps c takes d4, followed by rook d8. But then the game is starting to equalize a bit with all these exchanges here. So during the game, Illescas played c takes d4, which is quite dynamic. And Illescas played knight takes d5. Now, e takes d4, rook b8, bishop b5, a6, and bishop e2, preparing castle, is good, although after rook e8, black can keep up the pressure here. And then white could accept equality with just castling. The bishop takes h2 and king h1. So basically, just give back the pawn is the suggestion to white. Just give back your material gains and basically bail out. Your opponent has outplayed you a little bit, and that's kind of like the way probably could have went. But instead, knight takes d4. Knight takes d5. Knight takes d5. Bishop d5. And now rook b8. And now, here's the greediness. Queen takes d4. Now look at the development. Let's count the developed pieces. Let's count this castle is 1 being developed, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 against 1, 2. So black is up 2 units on white. And the position is wide open. Black has the 2 bishops. Queen and bishop are lined up on an h2 square. So even if he castles, check is coming. The diagonals are open. Files are open. So this is a position that's full of promise for black. Instead of being greedy, taking that second pawn, maybe just castle again. Bishop takes h2 check, king h1, and bishop d6. And of course, this move is coming up. And black does have a good position, but at least white has got his king in some type of position of safety. So, but after queen takes d4, let's see what happens. What would you do here? Well, one of the first things you want to do is when you have this lead in development, okay, the position is open. So now, let's stop him from castling. Bishop a6. So, white is up 2 pawns, but what side of the board would you rather play? The side with the 2 pawns or the side with the lead in development and activity? Okay, so, and what's funny too is that even though white is up 2 pawns, the absence of the black pawns on the B and E files actually allows black to use all of his pieces much more effectively because everything is open. The ranks are open, the diagonals are open, so it's good that those pawns are gone actually for black. Bishop d2. And now bishop e5. What does bishop e5 do? That just stops the idea of bishop c3 threatening any mate. So bishop e5, queen a4, and now queen d6, putting some pressure on an unprotected piece. Now let's look at again. This is a typical amateur mistake, is to try to cash in real quick. We see this here, right, unprotected, and then the rook behind it. So a lot of players go for something like that. Bishop takes b2, and then after queen takes a6, bishop takes a1, castle, and you see, you lose the initiative because now you have to protect that bishop on a1, comes back, and g3, and next move that's coming is e4. So even though white is exchanged down, black's attack is gone, it's dissipated. And the bishop is really strong on d5, and it's probably worth a rook, and black will probably wind up giving up the exchange anyway, just to get rid of that bishop on d5. So you have to be mindful of the initiative and not giving up the position for material gains. Capablanca said famously, position first, material second. Always think like that. So queen d6. There's e4. And now rook takes b2. And notice the flow, how the position, the dominance of black stays the same. Bishop is still here, preventing castling. The queen in a bishop battery, still putting pressure on a2. But now you've grabbed the pawn, but you've actually improved the position by putting a rook on the second rank. So you've gotten the pawn, but in a way that you maintain the structure of your advantage. In other words, you haven't given up your lead in development and your overall basic motive of the position. Rook d1. Right? Well, what happens after? Oh, let me mention that also just the obvious threat of rook takes d2 and followed by bishop to a1. But now what happens on queen c6? Rook takes d2. Now if queen d6, then check, and rook is saved. So king d2, bishop f4, check, king d1, and queen b4. Notice again the coordination, the use of open diagonals. This is what a lead in development is about, but it's most effective when the position is busted open. Remember that position has to be open. You having a lead in development in the closed position is useless. All right. So rook d1 was played. Rook c8. Right? The last piece joins in, right? This is like how Morphy used to play, those guys back in the 1800s. So g3, and that prevents bishop f4. So g3, and after g3, just rook takes d2. Rook takes d2, or if king d2, check, queen h6 checks, f4, and bishop takes f4, and white is going to get mated. So he took with the rook, and then rook c1. And the idea behind rook c1 is to mate after rook c1, rook d1, and just bishop c3 check. Notice the bishop on a6, cutting off the light squares. So we could say that white is busted here at the rook c1 check, but he fights on. So queen d1, and Illescas doesn't even take the queen yet. Instead, he plays queen a3. The bishop c4. Now he takes the queen. Rook takes d1. King takes d1. Queen f3 check. Forking the king and the rook on a1. King c2. He doesn't even bother with that rook. over there. And the reason why is because, again, if he lets his guard down and plays queen takes h1, then there's a problem with this back rank situation here. And rook d8 happens. A frustrating way to lose. So queen c3, king d1, queen a1. And now Anatoli Vaisser resigned because, of course, after king to e2, then bishop takes c4, check is going to happen here. So, for instance, so then just simply bishop takes c4, and that's with check. And after bishop takes c4 check, where do we go with the king here? Let's try to make some kind of challenging move here. Say, say, and then that would be check too. And there's no time for this rook d8 to occur on the board. And if we try to go to a dark square here, then just simply queen c3 check. And then the rook has to interpose himself into the position. So I hope you all enjoyed that game. That was fantastic. It's good to see the black side win. And again, learn from the grandmasters how to play these positions when you have a superior lead in development. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.